Okay, so about like the car situation, what happened, you know, how God had blessed me with the car. This was a God thing. Like 100%, this was a God thing. This was not a me thing. Okay? So basically, what happened, you know, I was going through like a really hard time. I was going through depression. I was going through a really big like spiritual attack. And so as I was going through that, like it was really hard for me to stay afloat, mentally, physically, financially. And I knew it was a spiritual attack. And like one of the things too is like when it comes to my car, my drives are the way that I have alone time with God. Like I know I could have it anywhere, but that's like a special thing between me and the Lord. So, anyways, like the Lord had showed me like this attack was coming, and when it happened, you know, like I ended up getting my car repoed, and I was at a client's house, and so I parked like pretty far from where like her place was at. Just because at first I had got lost. So I had parked pretty far. Now, this conversation that I'm having with my client is like a God conversation, and then all of a sudden I look to the left, and outside her window I see my car hooked up to a tow truck. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's my car. So I'm like, I wasn't angry or anything, but I was just like, how weird is it that I parked on the complete opposite side, but they just happened to have to stop right in front of her place? Because I guess like the guy had to get something out of the car or something like that, but he just happened to stop there, right? I had like this peace during it. I wasn't like freaking out. I had called my husband. He thought I was lying because of how calm I was. And he came to get me. And on his radio, it was Lecrae's album. And it said, I think it's called like All Things. It was the 828 album. How God works out all things for the good of those who love him. And like my eyes were drawn to it, and it was just like I felt like it was the Lord just telling me like everything's gonna be okay. And so anyways, I was like, you know what, I don't want to just go and like start looking for another car. And because this car was like from a mom and pop shop, and I like had rushed into this car, and I was like, I don't want to do that again. Like I don't want to end up in that same situation. So I had waited like a couple months. So, during those couple months, like the Lord was providing ways for, us to get rental cars. My husband had a car, but, as far as like for me, so, that was working out for a couple months. So then the Lord had gave me a dream to go, like start looking for a car. And I'm like, okay, like I waited a couple months, I wasn't moving hastily or anything. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start looking. So I start looking, mind you, I have this repo on my credit now. Mind you, I don't have the money for this car. And I'm like, strictly on faith, right? Sorry. So, it's strictly on faith. And then I'm looking, my husband's like, but we don't have the money for the car, and we don't, like nobody's gonna approve us with that repo. And I'm like, obviously like my faith walk is a little bit different than my husband. So of course I was like, okay, but my dad said to go look for a car. So I'm gonna go look for a car, right? But obviously like my husband had to be in agreement with it. So, eventually he was in agreement with it. So then I, started looking, and I end up like I'm applying and applying and applying and applying, and I'm getting denied, like back to back. And I'm like, God, I thought you told me to look for a car. Like, maybe I'm tripping, right? Because I don't even have the money to put down. They're probably going to want a lot down because of my repo and the credit. So I'm like, kind of stressing about that. And then I heard the Lord say, stand firm. And after that, it just replayed in my head all the time, like, stand firm, stand firm in what it was that God told me to do. Stand firm and believe that God will bless us with a car. Now, mind you, I was like 8 months pregnant. I want to say I was about 8 months pregnant. So the baby was coming very soon, and we needed a family car. And I remember too, like, I was even looking at like maybe like some smaller kind of SUVs, and the Lord had given me a dream. Like, obviously if you're a dreamer, like dreams are more symbolic. So symbolically it was like, you need to look for a bigger car, basically. And so I started looking. Anyways, I was still getting denied. Well, finally this one place is like, okay, we can approve you. And I'm like, yes, thank God, thank you, Jesus. So we get approved for this car. And they're like, you're just gonna have to put $2,000 down, this and that. And I'm like, okay, cool, fine. So I still don't have the money, right? So I'm still just basically like, I'm having faith. And my husband's looking at me like, you're cuckoo, but he just like went along with it. So they end up calling back, and they're like, actually, we need you to put like $4,000 to $5,000 down. I'm like, how did you go from 2,000 to like 5,000? I'm like, okay, I don't know if that's really like gonna work. My husband, on the other hand, was kind of like, well, that's probably just what we're gonna have to do because of the repo. Like, it's gonna be like that anywhere. But me, on the other hand, knowing, how the Lord has just worked things out in my life, I'm like, that don't really sound like something my dad would, be really wanting me to put myself in that situation, like $5,000 down, baby coming in 4 or 5 weeks, So I'm like, I don't know. I was like, not for it. Then I had like this thought pop up, and there was this dealership that I had went to. They didn't have any cars that I liked at the time. But I just felt like the Lord was leading me to go back to that dealership. I had went like, I don't know, it was a long time before that. But I had this thought to go back because I know they had something where they worked with credit. So I go, and I end up seeing this car that I like. So I'm like, okay, I like this car. My son had went with me. Like, I really like this one. It's big, it's perfect for us. Obviously, it was more on the expensive side. And let me just say something. So when I was in this process of looking for a car, I had a lot of people telling me, like, you need to just settle. Like, you need to settle for, maybe a minivan, maybe something, maybe you might not like it, but it's what you need to settle for, considering the situation. But the way my brain works and the way my faith works, I just don't think like that. I know that there's things, like where God will make you, He'll give you what you need, right? But my faith was like, I'm gonna ask my dad. So, obviously I was open to other things, but my faith was just like, I don't know. I don't know if it's a bad or a good thing, to be honest, but I was like, I don't really feel like my dad wants to give me that. So because my whole thing was like, Lord, I don't want to pay for another car that I'm just not like happy about either, Like, if I'm gonna be paying into a car, I want to love the car. So anyways, go to this place, find this car. It's a little bit pricier. There's another car that I see that was cheaper, but it was a smaller SUV. And so I'm just like, man, what do I do? So I talked to my husband. He obviously likes the bigger one, the bigger vehicle. I'm like, but it's a lot, so they're probably going to want us to put like a lot down, and, it's probably going to be really expensive. So, the guy's running. Oh, the guy tried to pull up the car, and for some reason he couldn't pull it up. So he was like, okay, well, we're going to have to continue this on Monday when my boss comes, because for some reason it's not coming up in the system. So I'm like, okay, that's weird, right? But I'm like, okay, we'll just wait till his boss comes. Now, my husband ends up coming back with me. So we look, he's checking out the car. He loves the car. So I'm like, okay, oh, wait, hold on. Rewind. Before that happened, I didn't have the money still. Even asking about the car, I didn't have the money still. And let me tell you guys, that weekend, one of my clients for my interior decorating business ended up messaging me that she needed like all this stuff done. You guys, God ended up giving me all the money that I needed for the down payment the day before we went back to go check it out. Because let me tell you, my husband was like, babe, you don't have the money to put down. But I'm like, but if God said, if he said to go look for a car, then clearly he knows we need the money for it, and clearly he's going to provide the provision for it, right? And that he did a day before we went back. So we go, right? Everything's good. The boss is there. My husband loves the truck. They end up taking $1,000 off the car, $1,000 off the down payment, and we ended up taking that car home that night. What I have noticed is with God, when he is giving you favor and it's a God thing, right? Like, I knew that guy charging me $5,000 down, I knew that wasn't a God thing. I was like, that don't really sound like my dad. When this guy was like, oh yeah, because at first he was like, I don't think he's gonna go down on the down payment, so when he was like, yeah, he took $1,000 off the down payment and $1,000 off the vehicle, and we lowered the monthly payment, I was like, that's my dad. Yep, he did it. So that's how that ended up working out. I was so happy and excited. I love our family car. It's big, it's perfect, because we got a big family. We got like a whole football team. So it ended up working out perfectly. And I just want to encourage you that if God told you something, believe him. And don't believe God for the minimum. It's okay to have big hopes and big faith in your Father. That's okay. Even when everyone around you is saying the opposite, have those big hopes, have those big dreams, and that big faith that your dad is going to come through for you. Because the Lord is faithful. I have seen it over and over again. And, I would love for you guys to check out my journal. It's called Stones of Remembrance. And this journal, you guys, helps us in our walk with Christ, because we go through trials. The Lord never said we weren't going to go through struggles. He never said we weren't going to go through it. But he helps us through those things, and he comes through every single time. There has not been one time where I've went through something where God did not show up and turn that thing around for me. So, I made this journal to remind myself, you know what? Let me get it so you guys can see it. Okay, so I'm going to post, I'm going to leave a link of the journal. But you guys, this journal, it gives, you guys can check it out. But on one side it says, what are the trials and the obstacles that I faced? And on the other side, it says, how did God come through? And it's so important. It's based off of the book of Joshua. And it's so important to remember the faithfulness of God. It is so important to remember all the times He has come through for us, because when we remember those things, it helps us get through the next trial and the next trial and the next trial, because we know that our Father has never left us, He's never forsaken us, and He's always turned things around. And so, that journal is so important to me, because it's important to reflect on the goodness of God and the faithfulness of God. So, I'll link that in the description. But yeah, I hope that this testimony helped. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day.